Welcome. My name is Mary Claire Speckner with the library, and over here we have Stephanie Merrifield, who is streaming this program on Facebook and our YouTube channel. We're glad you're here. Take a look at you have the September program guide, and I want to let you know that on Tuesday we have a program with Jacqueline Kennedy. It's Zoom, and we have a historical actress, presenter, person doing it, so that's going to be a lot of fun. But you need to register to get the Zoom link, and that's August 31st. So now we have Kimberly Hoffman, who's writing these series of books called Cleo and Roger, named after Cleo Rogers.
Memorial Library,
Memorial Library. We won't tell her who suggested that she use those names for the squirrels. Anyway, this is the second book, and we have the books back there for purchase, and then you have a new book out.
I do. It's called The Red Coat.
Yeah, so anyway. So Kimberly presented for us before, and you were here last week or the week before and did a program for children.
Yes, I did.
A lot of fun.
On the patio, yeah.
So thanks for coming, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. And as she said, I did a program on this same book out on the patio, but it was a little bit different because it was for children. And so we only went over 3 sculptures, but they took a walking tour. They actually got to walk around and see the sculptures. So they really enjoyed that. Today, we're going to sit here in this nice, cool room and see the sights. So Columbus, Indiana brings to mind images of cornfields, soybean fields, and world-renowned architecture. Yet I'm sorry, let me stop there, I'm kind of getting tongue-tied. We're a unique city in that you don't even have to leave out the city limits in order to still see big farms and cornfields and things. Yet we house works from renowned architects such as Elia and Eero Saarinen, Gunnar Burkitz, Harry Weiss, I.M. Pei, just to name a few. And in my children's book, Cleo and Roger Discover Columbus, Indiana, 2 adventurous squirrels set off an expedition to see these fantastic buildings and to learn more about their designers and the buildings along the way. So that was book 1. At the end of their journey in book 1, they decide to spend the night in Millrace Park. Plenty of trees, acorns to eat, good place to stay. And then they start off on their next adventure the next day, which is where I start in book 2. They decide that they're going to explore the art of Columbus now. They've saw the architecture, now we're going to look at the art. Because within this symphony of stone, as Lady Bird Johnson had named our city, surrounded by cornfields and soybean fields, you find not only amazing works of art, but a community that supports the arts. And such as our current designs that we have out right now with the exhibit Columbus. So we're going to explore some of the art that Cleo and Roger discovered, leaving their lodgings in Millrace Park and heading out to see the sights. And the first place they go is to see Eos. And this is one of my favorite sculptures. And I think the unique thing about art is you have the concept of the artist, of what they were thinking of when they designed the piece. But when you as an individual go and you look at a piece, you're going to get a certain feeling from it too, and it's going to make you feel a certain way. And the reason why this is one of my favorite ones is because it depicts a woman rising out of what to me looks like a tangled mess, and she's kind of rising victoriously up out of all of that and rising up. Now, when Dessa Kirk, who designed this though, when she was making it, what she was thinking of was the Greek mythology story of Eos. And if you don't know that story, in Greek mythology, Eos is the goddess of the dawn. And that's why in the park, she's facing east. If you've never noticed that, she actually faces the sunrise. And at dawn, Eos would rise and push away the night and open up the gates of heaven so that her brother Helios, the sun, could come out and ride his chariot across the sky. This piece was made from steel and fiberglass, and it was part of the 2006 Sculpture Invitational. And it was so popular that the community hosted a fund drive in order to pay for this sculpture and keep it permanently. And I thought this was really interesting. In a WTTW Arts Online interview, Mrs. Kirk said, Columbus, Indiana has all these amazing buildings by amazing architects that were commissioned by Cummins. The one great sculpture, the Henry Moore, which we'll talk about in a little bit, I want to be in the same city as Henry Moore. Why not? It's a beautiful thing. Beautiful city in a beautiful setting. You want to see great architects? Go there. There's New York City, but Columbus is where you want to go. And there's great sculpture. My all-time favorite sculptor, Tingley. I want to be part of that. I want to be there hanging out with these guys. And I thought that was so cool that she felt so honored to have a place in our city, whereas we probably all just feel honored that she has a work here that we can see. All right, so we're gonna go to another interesting piece. So Cleo and Roger decide to visit, there's some things they see before this, so I'm leaving some out. That's why you have to get the book so you can see all of them. But they end up behind the visitor center at Modern Totem. Now, Modern Totem was designed by Mr. Martin Beach, as you can see here in the photo. And a totem is interesting because it has varying symbols, symbolic meaning, and it can be a memorial, a house support, it can be a portal that they actually would walk through. They had ridicule totem poles where if you were someone who fell out of favor or did something bad, they would carve your picture in upside down to show that you are not favored. And sometimes too, they were just family history. It just showed the family history up and down the totem pole. But for the most part, they were symbols of community and friendship. And Modern Totem is just that. It's a symbol because all people from all around the world come here to the visitor center to see our town. And they start out here at the totem pole, at the Modern Totem. And when they do, we have this great group of ethnically diverse people gathered all around this totem pole. And then that also signifies unity, that we are all part of this world together. And so in the book, this is one of the places where it's kind of a sweet moment that Roger actually says something intelligent. And he comments that, he tells Cleo that this is a place where people are coming so that they can be united and have friendship. And he said, and it teaches us to be kind and to each other. And she gives him a big hug for it because right before that, he had said something really dumb. The totem is made from wasabi black granite. And Roger looks at Cleo and said, "Did you say wasabi, like wasabi peas?" And she's like, no, I did not. So that's why then he gets this hug, because he kind of redeemed himself a little bit. And it took Mr. Beach 800 hours to sculpt this. And it was very interesting. When I looked up the facts about wasabi granite, it actually, one of the reasons why they pick it is because it will shine up to this surface like you see here, but you can also have the rough surface such as inside. That would be a part that you did not shine up. So that's one reason why sculptors like it, because it shines up so pretty like that, but you can also have the contrast. Now this is a sculpture that's going to be familiar to most everybody, especially if you walked in the front doors. This is Large Arch by Henry Moore. And there's a reason why I put this particular picture of it on here. Normally we see a picture where you're farther back and you can see the entire arch out in front of the library. But I wanted to point something out. So when I.M. Pei designed the library, and when he had finished, and of course this church had been designed by Mr. Saarinen, and when I.M. Pei finished, they wanted something to put on the library plaza, kind of as a signature piece, to help set off that big wide plaza. And so Mr. Pei said, "I think you should get Mr. Henry Moore to do a sculpture, because his piece will look perfect and will be great contrast to the other buildings, because First Christian Church is very rectangular. It's a complete rectangle. Even on the building, you see rectangles everywhere. The library is very rectangular. So we have all these sharp lines and edges. But Mr. Moore's sculptures are always amorphous. They always have that flow to them. If you go online and look through his stuff, just completely all of it has curves and just fluidity to it. So that's one of the reasons why they picked it. And Mr. Moore, when he was designing this, said that one of the reasons why he did it the way that made it so large, and it's actually, let me make sure I say this right, this sculpture is the largest of its kind in the United States. And he made it the way he did because he wanted people to think about walking through trees or walking through nature. He wanted something you could walk through and also around. And when he was bringing this in, when it was designed, it was made out of 50 pieces of bronze that were sand cast in West Germany. So that tells you how long ago it was, because now we don't have West and East Germany anymore. It was shipped up the Mississippi River to the Ohio River, and then by interstate here to the library. And of course, this is the Bartholomew County Veterans Memorial. And you may not think of a memorial as being art. And another thing you may not think of is that this was not designed by an artist per se, but by architects. And we don't normally think of an architect, we think of them creating a building, not a piece of art. But this memorial very much is a piece of art. It is 25 pillars set on a grid at the Bartholomew County Courthouse Square. Each pillar was cut from Indiana limestone. The memorial is more than just a testament to the lives lost in the 20th century wars. It also contains letters written by county soldiers that give us a deeper glimpse into their lives. And just as we move from the overall picture of war to a more personal level, to view the letters, you must walk deeper into the sculpture in order to view those letters. So it's kind of like going from the perspective of being outside and looking at war in general as to going inward and seeing each soldier's personal life. And this letter down here is my mom's cousin's. That was actually a letter that he wrote home saying, "Dear Mom and Dad, it's about the middle of June, and by the time you receive this letter, I will have been in action." And he was killed the next month in action. But that was from him. It's also a meditative place where you can go, and it brings honor to those who gave their lives for freedom. Well, there are many more sculptures mentioned in the book, but the last one that I'm going to talk about on today is our Crack the Whips statue by Joe Saylor. This amazingly detailed bronze sculpture shows the wrinkles in their clothes, strands of hair, facial expressions, their off-balance positions, just as if they're playing the game. It's almost as if you froze a piece of time, like children were playing and you froze that piece of time. Kind of like Han Solo in Star Wars when they freeze him in carbonite. But it's so lifelike and detailed. And when I looked online at different pictures of this, there are pictures of children who will go up and grab the hand of the last child to get a picture because they want to be part of the game. Now, Miss Saylor, when she was designing this, this sculpture was created by casting metal, a process where metal is melted down and poured into a mold created by the artist. And I know this looks blank right now, but we're going to talk about some people. So in my books, not only do I talk about, in the first one, architecture, and in this one, art, but all of the characters are named for famous people. Just as Mary Claire said, Cleo and Roger are named for Cleo Rogers Memorial Library. There are different characters in the book that are named for different people in Columbus who were famous. So one of the first characters is J. Irwin Miller. And I thought it was apt to have him in the books because Mr. Miller was instrumental in getting the foundation going at Cummins that pays for architectural fees. So I don't know if you all know about this, but if, let's say, a church in town or a school is going to be built, if they will choose an architect from a list that the foundation has, then the foundation will pay the architectural fee, and they just pay to have the building built. So Mr. Miller got that started, and sorry, I lost my place. He was the chairman of Cummins from 1951 to 1977. He believed and promoted church activism and civil rights, and of course, as I said, was instrumental force in shaping Columbus into an architectural mecca. And then in this book, there is a mouse, and his name is Milton Mouse. And if I can get this open to the right spot and show you, usually it's not too hard to find Milton. So Milton, this is in front of Chaos, but Milton has a special car that he drives, and his car is called an Octo-Auto. Milton Reeves designed a car that had 8 wheels. And his thinking was that the streets at that time were cobblestone and kind of rough, and the 8 wheels would give it a better ride. And it did, but it really didn't catch on because the cost of the car was a little bit more. So then he went on to create or to invent an auto that carried 20 passengers. So it was rather large. And he was thought to be the grandfather of modern buses, the inventor of modern buses. And then you may not recognize this face unless you used to read the paper a long time ago. This is Helen Oakes. She was the bird lady. And she wrote a column for the Republic for over 40 years. And the reason in the book I made her a Purple Martin, and that's because she wrote articles for a magazine called the Purple Martin News. And I caught that and I thought, well, I'll make her a Purple Martin. The cool thing is too, my artist that I had do the book, Brian Moritz, he took characteristics from these characters and put them into the caricatures of the animals. So for the bird, she has the kind of the fluffy hair and the glasses, and Milton has glasses and wears a little hat, and J.I. has glasses and carries a notepad and paper because, you know, he was always thinking about stuff. And then my last character that I'm going to talk about, there are several more, but I'm just going to talk about this one. This is Clementine Miller Tangeman, and she was Mr. Miller's sister. In the book, she's portrayed as a rabbit, and actually as a rabbit scout. So she meets them, and she's heading back to her scout troop who are actually encamped in Millrace Park. And the reason I did that was because Mrs. Tangeman was involved in the Girl Scouts, both at a national and international level. So as you can see, there's much more than corn, wheat, or even industry and architecture in Columbus. There is a community who appreciates and supports the arts and encourages artistic endeavors. And one thing that we have to remember is art comes in many forms: sculpture, painting, writing, drama, dancing, and writing. Oh, I have that in there twice. May you find your creativity wherever it lies, nurture it, and allow it to grow. And that is my contact information. But kind of wanted to leave some time at the end for questions, in case anyone had any questions about the things I showed or about the books.
I have a question. Who funded the Crack the Whip? Do you know?
I don't know that I saw that.
Okay.
Let me look here real quick and see if I have my notes and just run over it. Oh, I do know.
Okay.
So that piece originally sat at Arvin's corporate headquarters. And I remember now the story now that I saw that. They bought it to honor their employees. And so they had commissioned her to do it to honor the employees and had set it out front of their corporate headquarters, which is now the Bartholomew County School Administration Building. The other sculpture that was out there, I think it's called Frog and Puddles or something like that, that is still there. But this particular one, after the school corporation bought the building, was moved to the Robert Garten Plaza downtown. So, and in the book, if you were buying this and you wanted to go with your children and follow the path that the squirrels go, this was my daughter's idea. She says, Mom, put a map in the book. I'm like, okay. So there's a map in the front, and it lists the sculptures down here, and there are numbers where they all are. And you can actually, I gave fairly good detailed instructions, like not where it was boring, but where you could follow their path. So you could actually take the book and read a part of it and then go follow the way that they go. And same with the first one. It follows a very definite. I mapped it out because I wanted to make sure it made sense. That I wasn't just sending people all over town in case someone wanted to do that. Anyone else have a question? This was both of these books were fun to write, but they were also a lot of work because it was a lot of research. I'm not, usually when I do my books, I do very light research because maybe I'm just looking up how a certain animal does things or whatever to get ideas. My husband is the venerate researcher in the family because he's written 2 nonfiction books and I write just children's books. But these books I had to research and I had to dig in. And so it took me a lot longer to write them because I had to make bibliographies, which I had not done since high school. Thank God that there are now things there are apps on the computer that you can pull up and you just put in the URL and it generates your bibliography for you. But it took a lot of research to write it, and also a lot of work with my illustrator. When I was getting ready to illustrate the book, I had to go around town and take photographs of every part of the story and get that all downloaded into a file. We use Google Drive to be able to do this because, as you know, if you try and send too much via email, it gets clogged up. So we just created a Google Drive and worked from that. And he made a storyboard and then we went through it. But he lives in Louisville and he had been to Columbus, but he didn't remember everything. And so he needed the pictures. And we had to go back and forth because one of the things that happened because of the fact that he was not from Columbus, there were a couple times where he would put the wrong building in. In my first book, I have Cummins corporate headquarters. And well, it's in this one too, because there's a piece of art there that the public can actually see. And when I told him, I said, I sent the picture, but for some reason he went and looked online and he grabbed the building with the big C in front, which is Plant 1. And I said, oh no, that's not the corporate headquarters and you don't want that picture in them. That would be so bad because it's not there. So we got that worked out. But there was a lot of work that went into these two books. They were not a quick deal. Most of my books take about 6 months and these took a lot longer.
Have you been to any of the grade schools in town to talk about the books?
Yes, in fact, I'm actually scheduled I'm scheduled in April to go to Parkside, and I went there last year as well. They do a unit study in the spring where they actually bring the kids downtown and take them around to see things. And so I'm going to go in before that, and I'm going to go in 1 week and talk about the architecture, and the following week and talk about the art. And I've been to other schools as well. That's one thing I love to do if you belong to a club, or if you have a child in school or a grandchild, or if you're a teacher, be sure to pick up one of my cards. I love going and speaking. I was at the Meridian Kiwanis last week and spoke there about one of my other books. I think I have around 14 topics now that I do talks on for different ages.
Did you mention what animal J.I. Miller is in the book?
I think I forgot. He's a mouse.
He's a mouse too?
He's a mouse, yeah.
Okay. So there are 2 mice.
Yes. It was interesting when I was trying to come up with animals for the book. I wanted to pick animals that you might see, that I didn't want to go like, oh, let's have a badger run in all of a sudden, because we don't see those very much, especially downtown. I thought about I did use dogs as well. In my first book on architecture, I highlighted Zaharicos because, they have to eat, right? They've been out all day running around. They need to eat. So the first one I did Zaharicos. And then the second one, I decided, okay, I need another restaurant. What am I going to do? And I wanted to support Randy Lapidus and Special Dogs and More because they do a great benefit for people who are disabled in the community. And I wanted to make sure that I helped them out a little bit. So I included them in here. And because it is Special Dogs and More, they're all dogs. And I checked with Randy ahead of time and made sure that was okay. When people are dead, I don't have to worry about it. So that was one of the cool things too, is I didn't want to, people were like, oh, you should put this person and that person. I said, I have to get permission if they're alive. And that's a lot more work. So I used all people who had passed on, because then as long as you're not defaming them, you're okay. It's just, that was a lot nicer. So.
This talk that you gave, is it similar to what you gave to the children?
The children, they got a few different, they got the same sculptures you got as far as the large arch and the modern totem. But they also got the Dale Shillelagh chandelier, because I wanted to make sure that if we went out and walked, it would be stuff within walking distance and we wouldn't have to cross streets. Yeah. And the Shillelagh chandelier, yellow neon chandelier is in the book. And that's actually an interesting one because it weighs, should I get this right? I don't want to say anything wrong. My brain's a little jumbly today. I'm coming out of a fibromyalgia flare, so my brain is still just a little jumbly. Put the right place here. Oh, and they sneak into Cummins, just so you know too. They're rascally, I'm telling you. They sneak on the visitor center bus in the first book, and in the second one, they sneak in the doors at the Cummins corporate headquarters. That could be my job, but that's okay. So, okay. How did I skip this? Okay, here we go. It weighs a little over half a ton. Yeah, I was going to say a half a ton, but I wasn't sure. And I looked up, and that's the size of a grand piano, of the weight. Because I was trying to find an animal to tell the kids, and I could not find anything that weighed like a ton. Half a ton just didn't work. When they do clean that, here's one of the interesting facts. It has 900 hand-blown glass pieces. And when they clean it, they have to take it completely apart. So when it goes back together, it never goes back together the same way that they took it apart. So it's a living piece of art because it's always changing. Of course, you probably wouldn't notice that when you walk by because of the way it looks. We just think it's the same. And another interesting thing that I talk to the kids about is the large disc at the bottom, the Persians. When Mr. Shaluli made those the first time, those were experiments. He did not make those going, oh, let's make these and put these in installations. They were an experiment that he was trying. But then after they turned out the way they did, he now uses those in his most impressive pieces, which is kind of, I think, cool that he took something that was just an experiment and turned out to be something wonderful. So that was one thing we talked to the kids about because we came back and we let them make their own sculptures out of Play-Doh. And I reminded them, I said, remember, just because you're experimenting, don't think that you make a mistake because Mr. Shaluli took something that he made as an experiment and became something very beautiful. So, yes.
As far as book signings go, what locations have you had book signings at?
Oh goodness.
I'm just asking because I illustrate children's books
Mhm.
as well, and authors that I've kind of traveled with. We've done things at Viewpoint Books, and when Yo Mamas was still in business.
Yes.
We did that.
Yeah.
ABC Stewart, the Commons, and I think that's as many as.
So I've done book signings at Viewpoint as well. I have also done them, and he may have to help me remember some of these. I've also done them at Yo Mama's. I actually had a book launch at Yo Mama's one time for one of my books. Yeah, they were very supportive. And that was for my very first book. We did it down there. I've done them here, the library. So I'll do a program sometimes on one of my brand new books, and we'll have a book signing. I generally, if I'm selling my books, I call it a book signing. So I go to a lot of vendor events. In fact, I have sheets back there on the back table of where I'm going to be for the next, all the way through December. And you can look up and see where I'm going to be at coming up. And a lot of them are vendor events that I do. I'm speaking at the Pride Festival, and so I'll also be selling my books and my jewelry at the Pride Festival.
We've done some shows together.
Yeah.
Before, and you sold your books there.
Yeah. And I've done other libraries as well. I've been to Greenwood Public Library, we've done the Johnson County Library at Whiteland and also at Franklin. And yeah, I get around. Oh, yes, sir, in the back.
I have a question, ma'am.
Okay.
A lot of the book signings, so-called, end up, at the end of programs that you do through, with schools and the service organizations and all that sort of thing. So you tie in themes from the books to talk about to these various groups, and then the books are just for sale. Is that not true?
That's true. Yeah. So like last week I went to the Meridian Kiwanis, as I was saying, and I spoke on my book, Love Hope. And that's a book about COVID and children's emotions during COVID, because it's been overwhelming for all of us. And children do not have the tool set that we have of taking care of things. And I struggled and even, sought out some coaching because I was having trouble with stress. So I wrote the book because I knew that children were probably having an even rougher time trying to figure things out. And so when I went to the Kiwanis last week to speak on that particular subject, then I had a signing afterwards and sold books and signed them. Yeah. And if you don't have any other questions about the art, does anybody have another question about the art? Okay, I'll tell you a little bit about each of my books then that I do have. I've written 7 children's books. And as Mary Claire was saying, this is a series. I've written 2 so far, the art and the architecture both. Then my first book was called Emma's Dancing Day. And that's about a little spider who wants to learn how to dance but doesn't think she can because her legs get in the way. So I do a program for that one on overcoming obstacles. Then I have another book called Sigmund Stanley Spider Squared. And Sigmund is a square spider, and he cannot maneuver like the other spiders can. So it's a book about thinking outside the box about disabilities, but it's also about being unique, being different, and being okay with that. So usually when I speak to adults on that book, I speak on the overcoming obstacle, or the thinking outside the box about disabilities. But when I speak to children, it's usually the being unique, that it's okay to be who you are. And it's okay that somebody else is different too. Because I think sometimes we really emphasize to little kids, hey, it's great that you are who you are, but we forget to tell them it's okay that that person's different too. So that's one of the things that I speak with that one. And that one is actually the theme I'm going to speak on at the Pride Festival when I speak. Then the next one is Pete the Brave. Pete is a click bug, and none of these bugs do I like, okay? People ask me that. Do you like spiders? Do you like click bugs? No. I don't know. They just come in my head. I write the stories. That's I just don't know. But Pete is a click bug, and he likes to play in gardens and get dirty and things like that. And so when he goes into this bakery that his friend owns, he's dragging in dirt, and all the other bugs are really giving him a hard time about it. But he's a really sweet bug who loves everybody and tries to be kind. Well, there's some peril that happens, and I guarantee you no bugs were harmed in the making of the story. But there's peril that happens, and Pete comes to the rescue. And I won't tell you the rest because it ruins the story, but that is like one of my favorite ones of the series that rhyme. That's one of my favorite ones. Then I have Love Hope, which I told you about. And then I have my newest book called The Red Coat. And this one came about because my mother told me a story about her life when she was a little girl, and she grew up during the Great Depression. Her family was extremely poor. They didn't have very much at all, and there were 8 children. When I was working to tell you how this story her telling me this story came about was, I was working at the hospital, and I had come home complaining about my manager. I just didn't like the way she was doing things, and I was 20-something, okay, so you have to cut me a little bit of slack. I was young and immature. And I was complaining really bad. And my mom said, wait a minute, what's her name? And when I told her her name, my mom got angry with me. And my mom just never raised her voice at all. And she raised her voice and got very angry with her 20-something daughter. And I went, whoa, this is serious. And my mom said, you are never to speak ill of her again. The reason why is because she is the lady who is in the book named Carolyn. And Carolyn, when she was a young girl, was a little more well off than my mother was. And there was a coat drive at St. Peter's Lutheran Church. And you'll have to read the book to get the rest of it. But it's all about gratitude and compassion and just showing gratitude to your fellow human beings. And so it's very community minded. But yeah, I get ideas for programs and I come up with them. I have one now of the importance of children's literature. And because I was at a book convention, a writers convention, and I realized how we were on a panel for people who write children's literature, and we were talking about different things and our themes. And I told the other authors, I said, you have to remember how important what you write is, because it is influencing young minds. Not that we're not influenced by books as adults, but a young mind is so much more impressionable. And I said, think about the books that you loved as a kid. You still remember that. And so I designed a whole entire program about that, which I haven't got to give yet, but I'm going to someday. So that's more, I've got that one geared more for like junior highs and high schools, or I'm sorry, middle schools and high schools. Because yeah, I'm that old that I went to junior high. But yeah, so I love giving programs. That's one of the things I really do love to do. So, any other questions or? Okay. Well, you're welcome. Yeah. And my books are for sale in the back. And as I said, I have business cards too you can pick up. That way, if you want to email me a question or something, you can, or you can follow me on social media.